At least kalahati naman. Sige, at least kalahati daw na phone.
So, tsaka yung kasi yung tsaka siya, mambahin.
Pero sabi mo mag-outcheck.
So, where I'm tonsillitis only. This is not, I have passed the tests. I have been to the hospital. I'm okay. Yes. Looks fine.
Magbuka na ng card niya. Iba yung kanya. Seven, expecting seven.
So good afternoon, everyone. We have a good number of attendees now. Thank you for joining us this afternoon, for taking time to join and listen to our MA History orientation part 2. So for this afternoon, we'll be having our orientation, which will be started by Dr. Marianela Florendo, who is currently the chair of the Department of History, where she'll be delivering the content of the MA History program. Just a brief background on our department chair. Dr. Marianela Florendo is a full professor of history and is the current chairperson of the Department of History and Philosophy of the University of the Philippines Baguio. A recognized pillar of historical research, Dr. Florendo has often been called to serve as a member of different national historical committees and organizations, such as the Committee on Historical Research of the National Commission for Culture and the Arts, as his own representative, and the Philippine National Historical Society, of which she is currently its co-president. Because of her contribution to historical research in and about Northern Luzon, she has been awarded as an Outstanding Citizen of Baguio, class 2015. So let us have our department chair, Dr. Marianela Ferrando.
Good morning and good afternoon or good evening, whichever time zone you're in. I'd like to acknowledge first our participants who are here on site. And at the same time, I'd like to acknowledge all of you who are with us virtually. I'd like to thank Doctors Kamagay and Abrera for joining us this afternoon to give us an idea on the foci of our MA history program, which are ethnohistory and local history. And I also thank Adonis Elubre, who's based right now in Hamburg, Germany, who will give us the many possibilities of being an MA history or a history graduate, and Joao, of course, who is on his first semester with the MA history program. So thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. It's afternoon here in very full Baguio. So let me share my screen and give you just an overview of the program. If you have any questions, then I can always answer. We can always address your questions at the end of the discussion. Treat this as some kind of a conversation. I hope that your curiosity in our program will translate to some serious consideration in applying and joining us. It took a while for us to actually conceptualize the program. Maybe, let's say, 8 to 10 years. Well, because we wanted to take into consideration all the context and all the needs of everyone. So our program has the nomenclature MA history, and we find the parentheses ethnohistory and local history. When we conceptualized the program, we took into consideration our institutional context, the context of the University of the Philippines being a research university. Our regional context, because UP Baguio is based in Northern Luzon in the Cordillera, and of course, the internationalization of higher education and the need for innovative and creative programs. Very briefly, we have, of course, the mandate of the University of the Philippines to become a research university, and that as a research university, it also would like to highlight it's being a public service university. And the desire is to have graduate level instruction linked to research and, of course, public service. And for UP Baguio, we would like to be in the lead role for higher education in the Cordillera and Northern Luzon. This was our articulated goal when we became a constituent unit, 7th constituent unit, December 2002. So we just celebrated, in fact, our 20th anniversary as a autonomous constituent unit last Friday. Now, UP Baguio, since its establishment, has always looked at its niches, particularly indigenous studies, ethnic studies, and this niches are reflected in our program, the MA History. Now, of course, we build on a long tradition of interdisciplinarity. based on our social sciences program, and we also take pride in the faculty complement of our department. On the regional context, Northern Luzon and the Cordillera region, so far based on our survey, does not offer an MA history program. There are graduate programs, most of them are in the field of education, but not a discipline-based graduate program. So the opening of an MA history program is a way to address the need for creative, innovative, responsive, and relevant academic programs. Now, for all of us, whether we're in academia or outside academia, we as as agents of cultural agencies, as members of cultural agencies, there's this teeming potential of applying an MA history. So it's not as if you only use an MA history to teach, but that there are many applications of an MA history. And of course, if you have to take in consideration the globalized setting, we're also offering courses in our program that will allow a broader context of critical historical thinking. Now, I'll not mention this anymore because Doctors Camagay and Abrera will discuss this. Why ethnohistory? What is ethnohistory and local history? 2019, before we actually finalized our program, we went into a market study and we were very glad to know that were eager to get into our program. Most of our respondents were K-12, there is now a need for more specialized graduate studies rather than generalist graduate studies. Now, at the end of the course, we'd like to take pride in our graduates who by then will be of history as practice, for them to have critical and creative thinking, of course, from a multidisciplinary perspective in history. History is by nature, I think it is innate in history for us to be enriched other academic disciplines. Also, we would like our graduates to be able to produce ethnohistorical and local histories. At the same time, be able to integrate their learnings to whatever field they're in. Maybe if they're teaching, get into classroom-based experience with the learnings they have in history. If they're into cultural work, then also practice history in cultural work. Now, of course, at the end of the course, we would like to be able to cultivate an appreciation for the plurality in human experience. We're a multi-ethnic nation, which should allow us, which should therefore cultivate in us appreciation for our differences, our diversities. Several layers of differentiations could be ethnic identity, could be religion, could be our geographic locations. At the same time, also consider ourselves within a global order. So our program is generalist in the sense that it should be able to impart what history is as a discipline, but with specializations, particularly in ethnohistory and local history. Now, please don't get us wrong. While our field emphasizes ethnohistory and local history and Northern Luzon and the Cordillera, this should be the course should be applicable also to other regions. So these are the courses that we have in our 36-unit MA history. So we have 15 units, of 4 courses. These 4 courses are required for everyone to take. So we have History 201, Philosophy of History, History 202, Historical Methodology, History 203, Philippine Historiography, 204, Philippine Ethnohistory, and History 205, Local History. For this semester, we're offering 201, 203, and 205. And next semester, we will offer 202 and 204. So it's a very lean program in the sense that we don't really give you a very broad menu of courses. But let's see where the flexibilities will come in. So you get all the 15 units of 4 courses. Then you choose 9 units from among this. We have developed courses like History 209, that's 16th century Philippines, 210 Colonial Philippines, 211 Filipino Nationalism, 212 Contemporary Philippines, 254 Southeast Asian History, 255 Global History, 260 Public History, that's what we're offering this semester, and 298 would be special topics that may cover historical methodology, interpretations of Philippine history, regional histories, and other emergent fields in history. Now, your history elective, if you choose to enroll with us, may also be taken in other UP units, provided the CU or constituent university or the UP unit offers an MA history or a graduate program in history. And in consultation with your advisor, you may take your history electives in other UP units. As long as you now consult your advisor so that you have electives that could enrich your background on ethnohistory and local history. Now, apart from the 9 units, the program requires 6 units, which may be taken in any field outside history. So if you want to do an environmental history, you can look for a graduate program in any UP unit or maybe here in UP-Baguio and take a course on environmental history or what do we have?
MSK.
Yeah, we have in UP-Baguio the MS
Conservation.
and Restorative Ecology. So you can also look for an elective there. Or we also have the College of Arts and Communication, where you can probably explore courses on translation, on language, on literature. And right now, we also run the Indigenous Studies program. It's a PhD program, but we will seek endorsement, approval for them to allow MA history students to enroll in the Indigenous Studies program. So you have 6 units of electives. Then finally, you also have to enroll in a thesis, have it approved, defend it. Then, in consonance with the requirement of the CHED, this CHED, this time, this is a new requirement for all graduate programs. They now require a publication. So a publication could be prepared while you're doing your coursework. Maybe it could be a term paper that you do for a course, which could be published, or maybe a research that you do. So hopefully you will get a lot of support from the department and from UP Baguio as you prepare your publication requirement. The other one here is it's not you can't see it. It's a language proficiency certificate if and when you need it. Like if you do a thesis on the colonial period under Spain, then you need, of course, to have a certificate of proficiency in Spanish. But suppose you also want to do Ilocano history, the assumption there is you're proficient in Ilocano. So that's the other requirement for you to complete an MA history with us. So you have here a total number of 36 units after choosing your electives and both history electives and electives. So if you're a full-time student, full-time means 12 units because that's the basis for this table here. During your first semester, you can take 201, 203, 205, and a history elective. Semester 2, you can take 202, 204, a history elective, and an elective outside history. By the second year, you only have 6 units left. This is very optimistic, of course. And then, by the second sem of your second year, then you complete your thesis, and lo and behold, we now have a graduate in the program. I think someone or some will be able to prove that this is doable. Now, if you are coming in part-time, then you can take 6 units every semester. We'll make sure you will not run out of courses. We're very flexible in the sense that we don't have prerequisites. So if you come in second semester, then we're not requiring you to take the first sem courses before you get enrolled in the second sem courses. So that's the one area of flexibility in the program. So which means you have 3 years to complete the program. What are the admission requirements? I think this should be doable also. A bachelor's degree from a CHED recognized institution of higher learning, a general weighted average of 2.25 or better. If you're a foreign student, your TOEFL, a passing grade in the scholastic aptitude exam, but we're not administering this right now, still because of the pandemic. And then submission of other documentary requirements like transcript of records, recommendation, your idea of what you want to pursue in the program, and other requirements, medical clearance, etc. Now, to graduate, of course, you have to pass your thesis defense and submit your thesis, approved thesis. You should maintain a cumulative weighted average of 2. So the grades in the university could range from 1 to 3, but as a graduate student, please make sure that you have a cumulative weighted average of 2. Then when necessary, a certificate of language proficiency, either foreign or local. a refereed publication, and other requirements that will be required by the university. Now, I'd like to present to you very briefly our core graduate faculty. We have Professor Adonis Alumbre, who completed an MA in International Studies at the University of Malaya and is currently doing his PhD in Southeast Asian History at the Universitat Hamburg. Professor Annalyn Munoz, who's a PhD candidate at the University of the Philippines, Diliman. Dr. Lea Nkiwe Abayaw, the Dean of the College of Social Sciences. You'll have to see her there. That's in Lea. Dr. Charita Arcangel de los Reyes, with a PhD in history. Dr. Raimundo Robildos with a PhD in history. You recognize me with a PhD in Philippine Studies. Professor Jose Macaluga, who's our MC this afternoon. And Professor Zuriel Domingo, an MA with an MA. We have, of course, 3 young faculty with us. I wish to acknowledge Jeriah Gray, Joao Reginaldo, and Nicolai Pangir. And I would be ready, the rest of the team would be ready to answer your queries after our conversations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lorendo, for that summary, the MA History program. So, of course, to learn more about our program, since our emphasis is on ethnohistory and local history, we're very grateful for the Dean of the College of Social Sciences and Philosophy of UP Diliman to accept our invitation to deliver a short lecture on what ethnohistory is about. And on that, allow me to provide a introduction to our speaker on ethnohistory. She is none other than Dr. Maria Bernadette Abrera, a professor of history at the University of the Philippines, Diliman, former chairperson of the Department of History, and is the current dean of the College of Social Sciences and Philosophy of UP Diliman. She obtained her BA in History from St. Scholastica's College, her MA History and PhD Philippine Studies from the University of the Philippines, Diliman. She has written on pre-colonial Philippines, particularly on the status and on aspects of Philippine church history. She has also done research on cultural history and the indigenous knowledge system, with particular emphasis on folk religion and rituals. Her thesis being on Philippine amulets and her dissertation on the indigenous boat building technology. Dr. Abrera is part of Oceanides, an international scientific research project on the importance of the sea in the major states of evolution of peoples. She is co-author of a college textbook on Philippine history, Kasaysayang Bayan, and served as president of ADHICA, a national professional organization for historians and history enthusiasts. Friends and colleagues, allow me to again welcome with us this afternoon, Dean Abrera. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Matthew, and thank you very much for your invitation. Allow me to greet my colleagues, all my colleagues in UP Baguio, in the Department of History, chaired by Dr. Nella Florendo. I am happy to be with you even in through this virtual conference. The topic that I will be discussing will be on ethnohistory as a field of history. So Okay. Ethnohistory is a branch of history. Okay. Let me share my the PowerPoint that I prepared uh, for this brief lecture. Okay, so I'm trying to get to the start of the PowerPoint. I think I should send it. Okay. Ethnohistory is a branch of history, a specific field in history, and there has been a movement. There has been several developments. There have been several developments in historiography that will explain the movement towards ethnohistory, because we are so my topic will be covering three parts. It will cover first the scope and the definitions, and then I will be giving you the examples of perception, so that it will you will be able to understand the difference between history and ethnohistory. And then the content will also be specific when we discuss ethnohistory.
Din, if you want, you can send po the file to me. If you cannot play it po, I chatted po the email. If you're having problems po.
One moment. I just sent it to Annalyn because I have her
No problem.
messenger.
Thanks.
Okay.
We'll share it now.
Nakita mo, Annalyn?
I-check ko po din. Sa messenger po ba din or sa email?
Sa messenger. Okay. So, first of all, there are several branches. The major branch, of course, we will know it to be political history. So that's where we discuss political events, political movements. That is the history that we usually know and that is commonly taught to us. There is also cultural history, it was already mentioned. Cultural history, social history, economic history. There is even diplomatic history now. If diplomatic history covers, of course, international relations, relations between nations, it includes war. What else? There is also social history, and we are, of course, there are biographies, historical biographies. Very new in the Department of History in Diliman, we have a young faculty who is pioneering in the history of emotions. So historiography is also moving towards a more interactive, interdisciplinary approach. That is why we are getting towards the different another kind of history that is also more interdisciplinary, and ethnohistory is very interdisciplinary. Particularly, it will definitely involve anthropology, of course, sociology. As a matter of fact, the first slide that that was seen earlier, the foundations of an ethnic community, that was developed by a sociologist, Anthony Smith. You'll see that in a while. So history, the ethnohistory will cover two aspects. First of all, it is not simply ethnohistory being the ethnic, relating to an ethnic group, but when we discuss the ethnohistory, it will also mean the indigenous ethnic groups. Okay, so I showed here the etymology of these words in order for us to understand what we will actually be covering when we discuss ethnohistory. And I'm saying ethnohistory will involve the indigenous ethnic groups. Indigenous means we're on the third slide already. Indigenous means taken from the Latin. It may two words, in, meaning to say within. Annalyn, can you go to the third slide? And so within, and then within a group. So it means that the third slide, Annalyn, if you can move it. Okay.
This one, foundations.
Ethnohistory. Okay. And ethnic refers to the group. So indigenous would refer to the space, and ethnic refers to the group of people. So it's the band of people. So therefore, we are not simply talking about various ethnicities in the Philippines, but these are the indigenous ethnic groups in the Philippines. So here, because indigena refers to being native to the land. It's sprung from the land, or it comes from the land. It will be from our cultural perspective. For example, the ones who would refer to the Philippines as the tinubuang lupa. Okay, so to spring from the land in our culture is to be like a tree, or to be like a plant that springs from the ground. So we are talking about, in ethnohistory, we are talking about the groups, the ethnic groups that are indigenous to the Philippines. So next. Okay, so this is Anthony Smith, the sociologist from who discussed the foundations of the ethnic community in his pioneering book, Origins of Nations, Ethnic Origins of Nations. So this is how you will recognize an ethnic community. Basically, so it has a collective name. So they know themselves by a common name. And that common name, for example, it would be Maranao. So let's give an example that is from the Philippine South. So it's a collective name. You identify yourself as part of that group. So you are Maranao. So, and that name has a significance to you, to your group. So this is, of course, the name that you yourselves give. So in anthropology, it's the emic versus the ethic. So this one is the name that that comes from your group, by which you identify yourself, and that name also gives you an identity. So Maranao means the name is related to number 5, the association with a specific territory, because they are the people of the lake. They are the ones who come from Lanao, the lake. That's the term for the lake. So that is why they would even claim that the Iranon, which they say is Irawanon, they are also or meaning from Ranao. So they are also part of the Maranaos. Okay, so collective name. There's a myth of common descent. The Maranao have their own indigenous history, which is their kasaysayang awit or their epic, the Darangen, and they have a culture hero, Bantugan, and they identify their cultural values and the virtues by which they give value to in that epic in Bantugan. They have a shared history and a distinctive shared culture. So for example, when we talk of Okir or the Torogan, that is Maranao. Okay. And that particular culture, of course, has been recognized already worldwide. They are in the list of the UNESCO for indigenous for intangible cultural heritage, particularly that a town, Tugaya, in Lanao del Sur, where the Maranaos are the Maranaos there are expert in Okir. And they have a sense of solidarity. That sense of solidarity comes not only from the name and the descent, it is also in the sense of the past that they have shared. Okay, so shared history and shared culture, they all contribute to that sense of solidarity. So when they migrate, for example, to Metro Manila, you will find them clustered together. That there is still that sense of solidarity among them. So language will be very important in identifying language as part of their shared culture, in identifying their ethnic community. Okay, so next, history. I'm looking at the etymology. I'm taking it first from the Greek before we go to eventually to the Latin, which so the Greek historia is learning or knowing by inquiry. An account of one, and it now becomes the account of one's inquiries. So it's a knowledge, it's an account, it's a historical account, it's the record, it's the narrative. So I selected the etymological meaning of history because it tells us first of the process of history, and that is one of the foundations of history, that history has to have the facts before we go to the interpretation, which is the narration. Okay, so the evidence and the fact comes from the inquiry. Okay, let's go to the next slide, because inquiring has also two aspects. There can be two perspectives about the inquiry. History as a result of one's inquiry. We can look at it from Western historiography, definitely because we took it from the Greek, so we'll be referring to Herodotus. This one is a British historian, is very well known to history students. In the 60s, he released his book, What is History? There is an inquiry from the perspective of Western historiography. So the inquiry will refer here to looking for the evidence, so that what you discover will be what you write about or what you narrate. So here, I took E.H. Carr's definition because he particularly relates it to looking for the facts. E.H. Carr was very pioneering in the 60s. Now there are more criticisms about his views, but it is very significant that E.H. Carr looked at the importance of the narrator in the telling of the story. So the historian in the telling of history, because he says it is the interaction between the historian and his facts. So it is the historian that determines whether this fact is necessary or important to me in my framework. Okay, so the process of interaction between the historian and his facts and an unending dialogue between the present and the past, because it's the present that's asking questions from the past um, to describe the significance of what had previously gone before, in order that it will guide the present towards its future goal. So I'm saying there's a Western perspective in the inquiry, in the process of inquiry, because the next slide will show you that there is also an indigenous ethnic perspective. And if you look at the epics, we look at the Kasaysayang Awit, we will see here that there is definitely another kind of perspective in the inquiry, in the kind of inquiry, and in the inquiring. And who inquires? We will find that in the epics. And the epics, I refer to them as Kasaysayang Awit because this is the story of the past of that indigenous group. But the form, first of all, it's the form, not yet the content. The form of that narration is always through song. It is chanted. So that's very important. So that kasaysayan is always in an awit form. So look at this. This is an inquiry. This is the first two stanzas of Ibalon. This is the Bicol epic. And these first two stanzas is being narrated, it's being stated, it's being sung, it's coming from Iling. And Iling is a bird. So it is the bird that is asking Kadunong to relate the history. So there is an inquiry. Tell us what happened before. Narrate to us yung kapanahunan ni Handyong, the historic times, the times of Handyong with your lyre of silver. So it is to be sung. That history is to be sung. It is not simply recalled. The recollection is through song. So that's very important. And you find that all over. All our epics, all our kasaysayang awit, they are always awit. Okay, Dulce Encanto de Aslon. Very unfortunately, of course, only about they are estimating that it's only about 1/3. This is only the introduction, actually, of Ibalon. Because Father Castaño, who recorded it in the 19th century, he recorded only this part, and he recorded it in Spanish already, no longer in the original language. But still, Ibalon tells us a lot about our culture, not only about Bicol culture, but also even in it, because it's also very important in the chronology. It's very accurate in the chronology of the cultural development and technological development of our country. So it is Iling. It is Iling who asks Kadunong. So Kadunong, from the word dunong, we can assume that Kadunong is a person because he is he has that wisdom. So, but unless we find the rest of the epics, that will remain to be an assumption, because Kadunong is not identified as by any other term except by the name Kadunong. Okay, so but Iling also, actually Iling is identified as Iling, a name But iling is actually okay. So for only you can put in song. For you only you can sing with such beauty and delicateness. The many mysterious events that happened in this region. So look at the next slide. Okay. So who is doing the accounting? And of course, I'm showing you here on the left side of the screen. That's Herodotus. Because in the Western tradition, it was Herodotus who now called the father of history because he wanted primarily to have sources. He went all around, he went all over asking people about what happened. But so that is the form, that is the historiography, and that is where we get the need for evidence to write down the facts. Okay, so but the content, the form that Herodotus narrated was still very, we call it now the traditional because it was political. It was about the wars. So, nevertheless, it is important that he established the process of having evidence. So you can go back. So it becomes now scientific because other people can go back and confirm what you have written, since they can go to your sources. They too can establish the facts that you have established. On the right hand picture, that's an iling. An iling is a mina. In the Bicol language, iling is mina in the English word. So iling is one of the most articulate birds because it can be taught, it can rival the parrot in mimicking. It's an expert. It's the expertise in mimicking human sound. So iling is also speaks in a sense because it mimics human language. So therefore, the inquiry that I was telling you about, who makes the inquiry? So there is already a difference here in the perspective because very, very clearly in the indigenous history, in the ethnic history, it's not a person that is making an inquiry. But that is accepted, whatever Kadunong responds to the inquiry of iling, the bird. And then what he narrates afterward, what he sings through in the Ibalon awit is now the history of the Bicols in the Philippines. So who makes the inquiry, and for whom is the inquiry? We ask those things now, but we usually ask those things as a result of our reaction and criticism to Western historiography. So we have to pass through von Ranke in the 19th century, what happened in history, and then we go to the Annals, and then we go to A.H. Carr, and then we go to from the criticism of the Annals of the positivist school. But if we look at it from within, we look at it from our own histories, then we see that precisely we can find the same thing. We need not go through that route of passing through the Western historiography, because it's already within us. It's already, that tradition is already within us. There is somebody who asks, and there is somebody who knows. Okay, and that retelling is therefore important because who is asking and for whom is that narration being told? Okay, so therefore we go to the myth of history. Okay, so the next will be constructing now the ethnic. So we have indigenous ethnic sources, and of course in the development of Western historiography, it's from the written to the non-documentary sources. We have the indigenous ethnic sources. We have the pre-colonial sources. We have very significant sources if we ask, because Juan Francisco, for example, has discussed already the paleography, through paleography, the Indian influences in our history. But beyond that, we can also look at the rituals, because the rituals will even show that even the Maranao epic, Darangen, will reveal Indian influences. There is a very clear connection to the Ramayana when Princess Lawanen is abducted. So you will find that. You will find that there. When you find the colonial sources, the construction of the ethnic is now more political. The different prejudices will set in, but we have to read it also very carefully, because there are also very different sentiments contained in those accounts. They cannot be lumped together as Spanish sources, American sources. They cannot be lumped together like that, because the sentiments will be very, very different. Missionary accounts very different from the civil official accounts. Alcina, for example, will be very different from Morga, who wrote in the early 17th, and Alcina in the mid 17th. Very different leanings and emotions will be obtained. The non-Spanish accounts, for example, especially the travelogues in the 19th century, the British who came, they will have different perspectives. In the 19th century, the Malaspina and the other scientists, even Blumentritt, they will have very different perspectives. So we have to be very discriminating and very critical when we read the sources and reconstruct the ethnic from those accounts. Okay, even the American official accounts, the journalists, the official writers, the travelers, diaries, memoirs, and of course the photographs. So many different sources to look at and very different constructions. Okay, so next, sorry, I'm taking a lot. So ethnohistory seeks to provide an integrated approach to the study and understanding of Philippine history, incorporating the major, at least we have a representation through the major ethno-linguistic groups in the narrative of national development. But still, we also have to be careful, because, for example, from Mindanao, so many indigenous ethnic groups, and yet within that group, because the Islam, the ethnic groups that have adopted Islam are more dominant in their narratives and in their assertion of their participation in national history. And so they claim that they are a minority in the national history, but within that minority is another minority, and they are called the Lumad. Another minority, a minority within a minority. So that still has to be part of our study. So next, we seek to provide an integrated approach. So prior to that, an integrated approach, it helps students grasp the historical development of the nation. It's not homogeneous, because there are so many ethno-linguistic groups. Dr. Florendo wrote about the participation of the Igorots in the revolution. So many other ethnic groups, not in very critical moments in defining the nation and in formulating the common goals of the nation. This would be the wars, the revolution, the Japanese occupation. The Tausogs were involved in fighting the Japanese. So we have to get all those. It's very important to have local historians. So I'm already going towards your next topic, and I think the last slide will be to help the students to understand the roles and interactions of various ethnic groups, to help the students acquire the skills to analyze the conditions and challenges of modern day Philippine society. We cannot also simply romanticize the participation of the ethnic groups, because there are inter-ethnic relations. And it's not even inter-ethnic relations. It's also intra-ethnic relations, because one of them would be Rido, which is not found only in the south but also in northern Philippines. So you see that ethnohistory is a very dynamic, a very exciting, and a very rich field of inquiry. So congratulations to all the students in this field. Thank you.
Hello, Doc Cabrera. Thank you for your lecture. Sorry, Doc, I wasn't here. I was listening at the back because I kept on coughing. My tonsillitis. I'm negative, ma'am. I took my antigen test twice and I went to the hospital. I have a medical certificate. So anyway, thanks so much, Doc Cabrera, for that lecture. And don't apologize, Dean, because we learned a lot from your lecture on ethnohistory. So to complement the lecture that Dean Cabrera presented, another focus of our MA history is, of course, local history. And to go along with the presentation that was done, we would like to again introduce our second speaker, who is a professor emeritus in the Department of History, Dr. Maria Luisa Camagay. Dr. Camagay is the in local history. She has the following degrees: a doctorate de Troisième. I'm sure Dr. Camagay will correct my pronunciation later. Cycle en Histoire, École des Hautes Études en Sciences Sociales, Paris, France, 1982. And I cannot pronounce this anymore, Dr. Camagay. Maitres en Géographie, Université de Paris, Panthéon-Sorbonne, 1979. And finally, in English, Master of Arts in Teaching, Social Studies, University of the Philippines, 1972, and a Bachelor of Science in Education, major in History, University of the Philippines, 1970. She is a multi-awarded author and a recipient of the following awards: National Book Awards for 1995 and 2006, Chevalier de Palme Academique, 2006, Patnubay ng Sining at Kalinangan, 2006, natatanging guro ng Gawad Chancellor, 2013, and of course, Professor Emeritus in 2016. Let us all welcome for her lecture on local history, Dr. Camagay. Good afternoon, ma'am. Thank you for accepting our invitation.
Okay. Thank you, Matthew. Matthew was a student of mine in 301, which is oral and local history together with Annalyn. So I'm happy to be in the company of former students of mine, a colleague, Deb. Really, we see that her talk on ethnohistory will logically, segue into local history. Okay, so I will screen share, Matthew.
Yes, ma'am, go
Okay.
ahead po. Yes. You can share, you can screen share naman po.
Do you see it?
Yes, we can see it po.
Yeah.
Okay. So I will okay. So thank you for the invitation, and I hope our roadshow with Det Abrera on ethnohistory will really attract many students to enter the program of UP Baguio, and it's very up that that UP Baguio is offering ethnohistory and local history, no, as an MA in history, because you're in the right place, no, and whoever you may not be, let's say from Northern Luzon, but nonetheless, UP Baguio has established its niche by having or offering an MA history in ethnohistory and local history. So I'll proceed. Okay, my outline will cover the following topics: definition, like that she would define ethnohistory. So I will do my share in defining local history. Then this will be followed by what are the possible topics in local history, then sources, some suggested sources, and also the importance of local history. Okay. So if we take a look at the definition, there's one definition coming from John Beckett, and he defines a local history as a generic term for studying communities at a level below that of a nation. So it is coming from his work, Writing Local History, page 189. Another definition is coming in from Carol Kamen, who defines local history as the study of past events or of people or groups in a given geographic area, a study based on a variety of documentary evidence and placed in a comparative context that should be both regional and national. So this one is coming from the work of Carol Kamen, entitled Undoing Local History. There's another term which has come very recently for us in the Philippines. It's really talking about and using, instead of local history, a nearby history. And it defines it as feeling rather than identify, explained here by the authors David Kaivig and Marty, rather than identify the past as local of community history, as some have done, and limit it to a concept of place, or call it family history, and restrict it to a concept of relationship, or talk about material culture, and confine the discussions. We have chose the term nearby history in order to include the entire range of possibilities in the person's immediate environment. So it's trying to move away from the definition of local history as just a place, no, confining it to a concept of a place, or in the United States, this is very common, family history, local history as family history, but they have tried to democratize it and say it can be beyond these two concepts. It's the entire range of possibilities in the person's immediate environment. So it's the environment. There is reference to the environment, though. Now, Resil Mojares also would give a definition, and he would say that I would like to take local history to mean the study of a geographical unit smaller than a nation. It can be a region, a province, city, town, or barrio. And this is coming from an article of his history from the periphery, local history in Philippine history. And in this same article, he mentions 5 perspectives on the relationship between local history and national history. So one perspective he mentions is that local history is the enactment of nationally significant events occurring in a particular locality. No? So for example, the example he gives is the Battle of Mactan and the death of Magellan. So an interpretation of local history there about the Battle of Mactan and the death of Magellan. I remember last year or even this year, I think Lapu-Lapu was identified by the Senator Go as a Tausug, no? So I think he had to apologize for that. Now, local history also reflects events of a national magnitude or reflects events in world history. So it's really, I think what's important in local history is not to confine the history of the place just to itself. It has to relate to the region, it has to relate to the nation or even the world. So he gives here an example of the economic stagnation of the Cebu port in the 17th and 18th centuries, which reflects the dynamics of the galleon trade in the 19th century. So in other words, the economic activities of Cebu as a port declined with the emergence of the galleon trade in the 19th century. Another example he would give would be the wide-scale cultivation of sugar in northern Cebu, reflecting the opening of the Philippines to world trade and the entry of sugar as a Philippine export to the world market. So there's always that kind of context of the local history to the national and to the world. Then he also says another perspective is every locality has its own unique history independent of national history, which is, according to Mojares, should also be, should prevail. And I think this is best seen when you do a periodization of a locality. You don't have to jibe it with the national events, but try to take a look at the history of the place and identify significant turning points of the place. Also, it has uniqueness in that point, that you don't have to force it to jibe with the periodization of the nation. And so he also mentions another perspective when locality and nation form into a totality, where you have local and national history bearing a functional relationship to each other. So for example, the examples he gives, the cultivation of sugar in Pampanga, Iloilo, and Cebu, and the cultivation of abaca in the Bicol provinces brought these areas in the orbit of national economy and affected economic changes in the provinces. No? So, which is also true, no? How sugar became a cash crop of the Philippines during the 19th century and led to the wide-scale cultivation of provinces for this cash crop, the same with abaca. Now, another example given by Mojares is the introduction of popular elections and representative democracy, where the Americans brought the far-flung towns and barrios into the orbit of national polity, as well as effected changes in the aforementioned local units. No? So yung introduction of popular elections also will not only have repercussions in the locality, but as well as the national level. So Mojares concludes that such currents of influence are not unidirectional, but dialectic. It's not only the character of the center which affects the periphery, but changes in the periphery can define the locus and nature of the center. No? So I think that is also, he brings out that conclusion that it should be dynamic. No, I mean, should not only be local history, should not only be descriptive, but it becomes dynamic as that particular locality, takes a look at the forces coming from the center or the nation, and how the nation also will try to trickle down developments in the local center. Now, what are the possible topics in local history? There are many. That's why you are open to many possible topics in local history. You can take a look at natural landscape and environment, no? Which may branch into environmental history. Or you may take a look at settlement patterns in the place or in the locality. So we know for a fact that pre-Hispanic communities were either riverine, following along the banks of the river, or maritime, no? And how colonialism did affect these settlement patterns because of the reduction. Then you have principal occupations: farming, weaving, fishing would be some examples, or cultural heritage like songs, dances, theater forms. In fact, Mojares will write a book on Dilinambay, a theater form in Cebu, no, and uses that to do local history. No? So it's really very innovative, because it doesn't mean that you write local history just using written sources or archival sources. Then you have weaving, etc., food, manner of dressing, and dwellings. You can write about political life, history of local political elites, municipal mayors, peace and order conditions, and social history, mentioned also by Det earlier. It's about everyday life, no? Because social history really is, it was, in a sense, God sent for me, because, you know, the traditional history was political, economic, diplomatic. And social history did give voice to the ordinary people, because those three kinds of history really were elite-centered, no? But social history gave space to people who are not elite or everyday life. So you have women. Migration can also be a like the migration of the Ilocanos to the Cordillera area, or Baguio particularly. You have also the role played by the elderly, the youth, various ethnic groups, and the sick and poor. Another possible topic would be social movements like revolts, internal conflicts, and forms of conflict resolution, history of a particular event, and biographies of individuals who shaped the history of the locality. Okay, now what are the sources of local history? I think maps are very important if you're going to do history of landscape, and I'm referring here to historical maps. No, these are maps which were made during the period you're studying, like the Spanish period or the American period, and of course, modern maps. Then you have accounts of travelers, also mentioned by Det, because I think the 19th century really made these foreigners attracted to the Philippines because of a field which was emerging, which was ethnohistory or ethnography. And so you would have these foreign travelers reach documentation on some of our ethnic groups. So I identified one example, which was German travelers on the Cordillera, published by the Filipiniana Book Guild in 1975. Then you have photographs and pictures also mentioned by Det, old residents. For this, you have to do oral history, which means you have to interview, no? Which means you have to interview the old residents and you have to transcribe the interview, no? Because that way you are creating a new historical source which is written, no? So it's very important that there is a transcription of the interview because that's a new historical source, no? Written historical source. Then, of course, you have private letters, diaries, keepsakes, heirlooms, and relics. No? Newspapers and periodicals. I know Baguio has a newspaper, active history of newspapers, publish census reports, public school records, town or city records, business records, mining companies, for example, church records and cemetery inscriptions. The church records will be archival, no? But cemetery inscriptions, yung mga nakalagay sa puntod, if you want to do a family tree, then you can take a look at the cemetery inscriptions, because in a way it will help you reconstruct a family tree and then you have, of course, the archival sources and fiesta programs. What is the importance of local history? I think local history, I'd like to cite here and read this passage of local history coming from Joseph Amato. His work is Rethinking Home, a case of local history, of writing local history. He says that local history carries with it the potential to reconstruct our ancestors' everyday lives, the goods, machines, and tools with which they worked, and the groups in which they were raised, in which they matured, celebrated, had ambitions, retired, and resigned themselves to their fates. It captures how they experienced the world through their senses, what they thought, how they felt, what they got angry, fought, and cursed about, what they prayed for, what drove them insane, and finally, how they died and were buried. And he continues, as Louis Mumford pointed out, every old part of the country is filled with memorials of our past, tombstones and cottages and churches, names and legends, old roads and trails, and abandoned mines, as well as the things we built and used yesterday. All of these memorials brings us to the past, and in so doing, brings us closer to the present. For we are living history as well as recording it, and our memories are as necessary as our anticipations. It confirms that one's own home is worthy of study, and again, in the words of Mumford, promotes a decent self-respect, and it is that form of self-knowledge which is the beginning of sound knowledge about anyone else, close quote. So with that, I hope you will enjoy the curriculum. I enjoy teaching local and oral history. So when the department says, "Ma'am, what do you want to teach?" That's the privilege probably of a professor emeritus. I would say, okay, oral and local and oral history. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your lecture on local history, Dr. Kamagay. Brings us, those are some of the readings were familiar, I must say. Readings in our class. Thanks so much, Dr. Kamagay. I know that some of us have questions we'd like to ask our speakers, but we would like to ask you to reserve them so that we can just proceed first and call all the speakers and ask them all in a Q&A session after. So to proceed with the program, we allow me to call on our colleague also, Professor Adonis Alumbre, to discuss the UP Baguio MA History and the professions that one can pursue upon completion of the said program. Professor Alumbre is an assistant professor at the Department of History and Philosophy of the College of Social Sciences, University of the Philippines Baguio. He is currently on leave and pursuing a doctorate in Southeast Asian history at Universitat Hamburg, Germany. His dissertation examines European ethnological imaginaries of late 19th century Filipinos. He holds an international master's in ASEAN, Southeast Asia, Studies from University Malaya, Malaysia, and a BA in History from UP Diliman. He has taught history, social sciences, and social and development studies in UP Baguio. He also taught in UP Los Baños and served placement at the External Relations Division of the ASEAN Secretariat, Indonesia. Colleagues, let us welcome Professor Alumbre live from Germany. Good morning or good afternoon, Professor Alumbre.
Hello, Sir Matt. Thank you. Thank you for the generous introduction. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
Am I
yes.
clear? Okay,
Yes.
thank you. So magandang araw po sa lahat. I would first like to greet my former professors when I was an undergraduate in UP Diliman, Dean Det Abrera and Prof. Emeritus Maluca Magay, to whom I owe a huge academic debt of gratitude. Extending my greetings as well to colleagues in the Department of History and Philosophy and in the College of Social Sciences. I see Professor Emeritus Jun Brett and Dean Leia Abayaw in the audience, as well as former students in the BA Social Sciences major in history program. Hello to all of you. From the more academic, substantive, more academic or more substantive discussions, I'll move a little bit back to a discussion about our MA history program. So let me just share my screen. Okay. All right. So I understood the task given to me by our chair, Dr. Nela Florendo, as that of a career talk. There is actually a standard spiel to this, especially for undergraduate students. So I see some of them here in the audience to whom I gave a sort of like a career talk like years ago. I, however, decided last minute to tweak this presentation a little bit and emphasize more on the competencies that go hand in hand with certain career paths. So I hope I can do justice to what my department chair requested me to accomplish this afternoon. All right. So, of course, my first question when I had when I began, preparing for this presentation is that what is it exactly that the training in MA history does? And as a student of history, I naturally went back to history to to understand where the concept of an MA or a master's degree originated. And I found earliest expressions of this idea of a master's training in history from medieval Europe, the concept of a magister that was meant as a title for graduate students, students who finish their undergraduate. Uh, Upon their graduation, they become teachers, and so they could carry the title magister during these times. Now, I was looking further, and I found that it changed for a while, and the idea of a master's degree has something to do later on with the idea or with the concept of a recognition or an honor added to a baccalaureate degree by virtue of intellectual, moral, or financial, some would say, superiority. So that person would be given the title master or magister in such an eventuality. At around the 1870s, things would change in the context of masters in the context of a master's offering or a sense of a master's degree, because this would be the first time that it will be articulated as such in the context of the creation of our modern notion of a university. So this was transplanted from Germany to the United States at around the 1870s. What's interesting at this point is to emphasize the idea that it has always been seen at around this time as secondary to a doctoral degree. So you can think of the master's degree as playing a sort of second fiddle during this time to to PhD, right? And the American Historical Association, as early as I think the last decades of the 19th century and going to the 20th century. In fact, the entire 20th century, because it was in uh, it was only in the early 21st century that they were able to review their concept of a master's degree in the American Historical Association. And it was said back in the 1890s that the master's degree is an ill-defined being. And so there's a sense that the master's degree or a master's degree in history is an ambiguous, vague conception. And so people merely see it as a sort of transition towards a PhD program. It cannot be defined and all that. But I would like to argue for this presentation that it is a legitimate degree in its own right, but it can also be a step towards PhD if the student so desires. So for those of you here who are currently enrolled in the program or who are thinking of moving to, the MA History offering of UP Baguio, think of these considerations as you uh, move to this step of the academic ladder. Now, here is the outline of my presentation. I'd like to pick up from my last point to think of the master's degree as an advancement in itself. It is an advancement in learning in terms of competencies. And so this is the tweak that I was referring to earlier. I was thinking to not just focus on the career paths that a student or a graduate of MA history might take, but also see such career paths in the context of historical competencies that can be learned in an MA history degree program. So I see both as you know hand in hand. All right. In what do you call this? I see both hand in hand as important in the pursuit of you know a more comprehensive sense of a master's degree. I'd like to talk about the distinguishing features of an MA in history in terms of competencies. I'd like to put forward an transactional view of learning, right? And then to the meat of the discussion, let's talk about some ideas. I tried to narrow this down to two broad fields. I will talk about public history, but this one is broadly construed, quite different perhaps from how it is being articulated, but let's go into that later. And then academic history, is a more traditional sense of a professional advancement in the context of a master's degree in history. All right. So there has been, this was what I was referring to earlier when I talk about the American Historical Association, thinking about how to rescue history from the master's degree in history from its position of from its peripheral position. So it identified what it calls the essential elements of mastery in a master's degree program. And it refers to five particular attributes. First is the base of historical knowledge. So we're talking about competencies here because we would like to emphasize that these are the things, these are the stuff that we envision our students to be going into as they uh, proceed with the program. And we see these competencies as necessary for particular career paths that uh, our students or our future students would like to consider. Right. So the American picking up from this literature, the base of historical knowledge as defined is the breadth and depth of historical knowledge, the familiarity with historiography, and the ability to incorporate a comparative, not a global perspective on history. So this is like the the base, the common reference point for anyone taking a master's degree in history. That there should be that base. Another important attribute of this mastery in history degree program, history master's degree program, would be the ability to uh, do research independently. Uh, there's a need for the student uh, to demonstrate mastery of content, of show familiarity with primary sources, and uh, uh, show and or demonstrate competent historical analysis. Right. So these are the competencies again that we would like to emphasize. All right. Communicating history is as important as the two others mentioned. This refers to uh, talking about history or presenting the past in different kinds of audience, right? So it's not just about communicating history to students. It's also about presenting the past to non-specialists of history. So these are again expected competencies from a master's degree program, and you would see these in line with what was mentioned by Dr. Florendo earlier about our program learning outcomes. Yeah. All right. Okay. Okay. Foundations of professional identity as a historian. Another expected competency would be for a graduate of a master's degree in history to be able to show familiarity with familiarity with the development uh, historiography, no, the context through which historical events take place. What else? The ethical practices of historians and the, the research through which we produce historical knowledge. So these are what we can call the foundations of our professional identity as historian. And lastly, completing these elements of mastery would be thinking like a historian. How does one think like a historian? Uh, the author, Philip Katz, refers to the ideas of historical sensibility, right? And habits of the mind, no? Which pertains to how we view or historians view sources, historical events, etc. So again, let me reiterate competencies that are necessary for developing our paths towards a professional advancement. But let me also emphasize that part of such competencies would be to look at learning as a value in itself. No? So I'm calling this a non-transactional view because I would like to assert that, while it is important to look at the professional advancement as an end goal, learning in itself can be seen as valuable in its own right or in its own terms. So we're not just part of like a machine that we're supposed to perform a certain role. But I would like to think that learning itself it's that radical act of uh, gaining access or constructing knowledge about our world. And as I hinted, it's not always in opposition with being concerned about practical matters. I would like to think that it can go hand in hand, seeing the value in learning and charting your professional or career orientation as we move forward. I see MA in this context and MA in history as enabling conditions for knowledge and skills development. So to me, this is quite important to emphasize to our students and would-be students. And finally, since we're offering this in the University of the Philippines, we'd like to emphasize learning and its social responsibility. So you're not just learning for the sake of it. We're also valuing learning in terms of our responsibility to the society at large. Now, as I said, I divided the presentation broadly into advancement in learning and professional advancement. So for professional advancement, I'd like to talk about careers in terms of public history and academic history. So I define public history here, again, very broadly, different from how it is defined academically. I'm just using this as a term to refer to engagements using history directly or indirectly. And so there are certain competencies, for instance, that can be thought of in conjunction with possible careers in the public realm. No? Competencies like what we're trying to um, focus on in UP Baguio, such as sensibilities on ethnicities or about ethnicities and localities. Then the ability to uh, organize and manage information, which is very important in this day and age. Na? Investigative work, which is a hallmark of the historical method. Intercultural competence, which is becoming more and more important in our what they say as globalizing world. No? I think of career paths no, in terms of public history as this. No? So holders of an MA in history could look into heritage and cultural work. There's much promise to this now because societies all over the world are investing in heritage and cultural work tourism. But of course, we need to think of tourism in more historically and culturally appropriate terms, not just in mere, no, uh, not just as a mere uh, consumption, etc. Uh, Information management is another, as I said, it's another um, a competency that can point to particular career paths, let's say works in archives, libraries, and public records. I recently heard of a former student uh, working on uh, public record of his in his hometown. So I think historians or students of history are very much uh, uh, prepared for doing such kinds of work. Public policy or policy analyst, governance in local government units, for example, and in the area of foreign affairs, where we uh, can show uh, our competence. Again, in terms of understanding a variety of contexts, a variety of cultural uh, contexts. So these to me are important aspects that we could relate to when we think of competencies in relation to careers in history. Other sorts of historical competencies, right, that we can think of course, contextualizing, seeing things in its multi-causal context, application of historical methods, source criticism, analytical reasoning, and the creation of stories. We can look at career paths, let's say, in local and international development and humanitarian work. So, for instance, there is a colleague working in the International United Nations Human Rights Institute, who's a graduate of history as well. So again, this points to the fact that a graduate of history can go to places like literally as well. Uh, Research, our exposure to the rigors of the historical discipline na, could point us to particular career paths relating to research and consultancy work. Right. And finally, media and communication. I mentioned about investigative work earlier. Former head of the Philippine Center for Investigative Journalism, was a graduate of history. So, of course, with proper training in journalism, for instance, uh, we can also participate in developing a certain career path towards these goals. All right. Academic history, as I said, this is the traditional, often seen as the traditional endpoint of a master's degree. But as I have repeatedly mentioned, there are, I mean, a master's degree in history is more than just the academic uh, uh, dimension. But nonetheless, it's an important uh, aspect of professional development. Many students, of course, are taking their masters in relation to uh, their academic requirement in their respective universities or schools. So I would say it's traditional, but it's becoming increasingly complex. And this is what I think of academic history in terms of what UP Baguio MA history has to offer. So, for instance, in terms of teaching, I'd like to think of our brand of MA history as introducing particular pedagogical approaches, and our students could pick up from these. We have an expert in education here in our faculty, Dr. De Los Reyes. We can talk about current trends in the field. We have a young, vibrant faculty who are very much immersed into the various trends, no? The historical discipline, new sources, secondary, primary, and interpretations of history, no? Can also be taken, no? Or can also be uh, uh, yeah, can also be taken by our students, no? From getting our courses in the MBA program. No? But most importantly, I think no? The way the faculty, for instance, created the syllabus before, there's a way to structure historical knowledge. And I see each syllabus, each course as an attempt to structure this complex, sense of the past. So I think that's one way through which students can benefit from taking MA history. Finally, I think of this professional advancement in terms of working towards a PhD. Again, not not necessary to a master's degree. Master's degree is a legitimate degree in its own right, but then now you have to state that it's also something that can be seen as a transition towards PhD. And this is where again UP Baguio's brand of MA history could come in handy. It's a research intensive program. Uh, we were very conscious of this when we were developing the program. And Dr. Florendo mentioned earlier the publication requirement. I think that's one hallmark of our degree. Networks and linkages of the faculty could be tapped, for instance. Um, the multidisciplinary context upon which the MA history in UP Baguio has been articulated, I think is one of its key features, one of its distinguishing marks. All right, and then finally, what we have is a generalist program with a specialist orientation. So in a PhD context, I think this is important because in PhD we would like to see the balance between the forest and the trees, so to speak. We would want to see the totality vis-a-vis the specifics. And so MA history positions its students. The MA history of UP Baguio positions its students to such preparation for PhD. So maybe some final tips to wrap this up. Uh, I'm speaking to students or would-be students. So determine your specific purpose for getting an MA in history and work around that. And by work around that, I mean you enhance skills that are in line with your learning and professional advancement or career goals. So for instance, you would want to work on, let's say, uh, oral history. Sorry, you would want to work on research, right, or consultancy work. No? And then a very important component of that research or consultancy work would be, let's say, oral history or interviewing. Then you improve your skill on interviewing or on oral history, and you would get that from some of our courses. No? So find the connection again between competency and the career that you are uh, identifying for yourself. Expand your network, right, and integrate with the historical community. So we have an interesting uh, uh, historical community in the Philippines. There are plenty of organizations from ADHICA to Philippine Historical Association. There's Philippine National Historical Society. There's Bagong Kasaysayan Incorporated. All these are parts of the historical community. There are many local history institutions, local research institutions that can be part of this broader community that you might want to uh, uh, put yourself in. But ultimately, plan for the completion of your degree. And with that, always consult with the faculty for curricular or even professional matters. So thank you very much. If you have questions, I'd be happy to um, uh, entertain them. And I hope uh, you gain something out of my sharing. Thank you.
We did gain a lot, Professor Elumbre. Thank you for sharing not just the career opportunities, but the competencies, which we often forget when we take a program. So before we open the Q&A, just a final presentation, but this will be a testimonial by our own student in the MA History program, who is Mr. Joao Paulo Reynaldo, who is an instructor in the Department of History and Philosophy, but is currently on leave pursuing his MA History in the said program. So with that, we would like to share his recorded testimony.
Mukhang mahirap. Baka dapat doon, ma'am. Baka dapat doon sa laptop mo. Kasi nakakonect siya sa Bluetooth. Sige na, sige na. Kasi,
Give us a few moments. We will just transfer the video to the one that we're using for the Zoom.
Sa aking kamakailang pagbisita sa lungsod Davao, dumalo ako sa ika-33 Pambansang Komperensya ng Adhika na ginanap sa Universidad ng Ateneo de Davao, kung saan ang mga presentasyon ay may kinalaman sa malalim na ugnayan ng mga pamayanan ng Ilawud at Ilaya sa daloy ng kasaysayan. Batay sa mga salaysay ng mga lokal na residente at mga iilang nakasulat na dokumento, isinalaysay ni Ginoong Larry June Vedra ng Central Mindanao University ang konsepto ng ilihan o puok tanggulan sa tagong kasaysayan ng mga Higaonon sa Hilagang Mindanao. Aniya pa, naging kasangkapan ang mga ilihan hindi lamang sa paghihimagsik laban sa mga mananakop na Espanyol, kundi maging sa pagpapatuloy at pagpapanatili ng buhay, ginhawa at dangal sa sinaunang bayan sa Hilagang Mindanao. Natuwa din ako na halos kapareho ang konseptong ito sa ili sa mga bulubunduking pamayanan ng Cordillera. Mula sa lungsod Davao, nagpatuloy ako sa Zamboanga, Sibugay upang bisitahin ang aking kapatid na nakapag-asawa ng isang Subanon, isang pangkat sa rehiyon ng Zamboanga. Sa mga pakikipag-usap sa kamag-anak ng asawa ng aking kapatid, nalaman ko ang ilan sa mga detalye sa kasaysayang lokal ng Zamboanga, Sibugay, mula sa mayayamang kalinangan at pamayanan ng mga Subanon, ang masalimuot na relasyon nila sa mga kapwa Muslim at Kristiyano, ang pagdating ng mga Ilocano migrants noong 1960s, ang epekto ng digmaang sibil sa kanilang lupa at kabuhayan, at ang patuloy na marginalization ng mga Subanon sa kasalukuyan. Bukod pa rito, napansin ko rin ang unti-unting pagpunlad ng kanilang lalawigan dahil sa kabilat ka ng pagpapagawa ng mga daanan, pagpapatayo ng mga industriya at pamamayagpag ng katahimikan. The 3-day Adhika conference on my short visit in Zamboanga, Sibugay reminds me of countless multiple histories in the localities that most of us never hear and read in Philippine history textbooks. These are accounts that contain a wealth of details that help reveal how societal changes impacted the lives of ordinary people. Growing up in Camarines Sur, I learned about the 1896 Philippine Revolution in class without learning about the significant events that took place in my own hometown. From the conceptualization of the Katipunan to the fall of the Spanish central government months later. Fortunately, I learned about the heroic deeds and the martyrdom of 15 Mártires del Bicolandia, or the 15 martyrs of Bicol region, in a conference I attended virtually years ago. These men sacrificed their lives for the kaginhawaan of their fellow Bicolanos. Like the Northern Mindanao and the Zamboanga Sibugay stories, I would never have known about these men and their contributions because they were neither part of the curriculum nor parcel of our local consciousness. I think this is the reason why I took MA History with emphasis on ethnohistory and local history. Currently, I am a graduate student in this program and I am taking up 12 units this semester. And as someone who intends to pursue a profession in the academe, I think I continue to reap the benefits of having studied history with some flavors of social sciences at UP-Baguio. Specifically, our graduate program this semester has introduced me to primary and secondary sources and other historical literatures that were wide enough in scope to stimulate my curiosity, to expose me to scholarly possibilities, and also to educate me in the fundamentals of historical scholarship. Yet it was also deep enough in particular subjects to offer a foundation for my own self-directed research on ethnohistory and local history. I must admit that the courses in particular has offered an excellent preparation for research, for analysis, for argumentation, and also for oral and written communication with its emphasis on independent inquiry. It has also satisfied my need for work that values professionalism, that promotes creativity, and also employs historical imaginations. Last, though certainly not the least, the discipline of history has provided a wonderful community and introduced me to professors who have been warm sources of intellectual and personal guidance throughout our classes, albeit virtually. Our professors have pushed us to get to know the subject matter and also to think quickly on our feet. Theirs are a commitment and trailblazing scholarship that inspires and also nurtures. All I could say after working with them and attending classes under their tutelage is that there are lodis, idol in the discipline of history. Lastly, my degree program has emphasized that apart from local histories, there can never be a nation. It should be borne in mind that nation is made up of its parts, the regions, the provinces, the cities, the municipalities, the communities, the villages, and the nation's histories must be the sum total of the history of its parts. It also emphasizes that no town or provinces exist independently of the nation or vice versa. And just as the auto mechanic understands the entire machine only if he knew the specific parts, so also national history becomes intelligible only in the whole context of local history. Simply put, and of crucial importance, is the realization that interest in the study and understanding of Philippine national history mainly hinges on one's appreciation of his or her own local or town's history. Thus, by pursuing MA History and Ethnohistory and highlighting local stories in the Philippines, I think one way we can do is to help do justice to an archipelago so diverse, inhabited by so many, but represented by so few. So now I urge our audience to consider applying to our MA History Ethnohistory and Local History at UP Baguio, and you will learn a lot of things when it comes to theories and also the practice that you can apply in your career and in your personal life. Thank you very much.
So much, Sir Joao, for sharing that testimony on the program. To note, Joao also actually is also was taking an MA in the Open University. So he's coming not only from his experience as an MA history student, but also as a MA ASEAN Studies student at the UP Open University in the testimony shared. So I know that we're over time already, but we did promise a short Q&A, and I would like to thank our speakers for still staying here. But Dr. Abrera had to already go ahead because she has an appointment at 5 p.m. However, we still have with us Dr. Camagay, we still have here Dr. Florendo, and we have Prof. Elumbre. So if you have any questions about the program, the structure, or you have a question about local history itself and ethnohistory, I believe that our speakers are more than ready to answer any of your questions. So do we have any questions on the floor at the moment? Perhaps one basic question that our participants would like to know is the rate, perhaps. Dr. Renella, how much would be the unit, the price per unit of the program?
Based on what is prescribed by the university, the program, enrolling the program will require a tuition fee of 1,000 pesos per unit. If you're interested, you can also explore the available financial assistance like slots for think-up slots from CHED, particularly for those who are in the teaching profession.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Nella. We have a participant raising his hand. We'd like to call Sir Reese Lloyd Lasha. Yes, sir, you're free to unmute. Just unmute your mic and you may state your question. Sir, we can't hear you po.
Unmute, sir.
Please unmute, Sir Reese. Naka-mute po si Sir.
Am I
Ayun.
hello po? Am I audible po?
Yes po.
I would just like to clarify po no regarding po sa program. I'm really interested po in applying for the program. But are you catering full online classes po? Kasi I'm away from I am away from Baguio po kasi.
Yes, Dr. Nella.
Well, we have been encouraged also to go face to face, but for the MA history program, we will go hyflex, just like what we're doing right now. We have people here attending on site and then people attending virtually. So if you can't come to Baguio, therefore you can attend virtually, but as much as possible, we would like to encourage you to address connectivity problems so that it would be really, it would be conversational. Like I teach, and sometimes I'm the only one that appears on screen, and everyone is just it's just a black box. So if it has to be conversational, then we will all have to either be seen on screen or be present in the site. Right now, our schedules are weekends and probably one on a weekday night. So that's how it will go. You can opt to attend online, and particularly Saturday classes, we will be available to also accommodate face-to-face or on-site students, particularly those who are prepared.
Thank you.
Thank you very much po, ma'am.
Welcome.
Si Mr. Joe.
Sir Joven was raising his hand a while ago. We
Yes, good afternoon, Professor Luga. I have the same question with Sir Reese. So it has been answered by Dr. Florendo. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. So we still have a few minutes to entertain other questions from our participants. Even those who are attending live, of course, are free to ask questions. So how about the others?
Matthew, there's a question addressed to me. No, it was sent to me. It says, is it possible, because in the case of Joao Reginaldo, he is pursuing 2 MA degrees. Actually, he's pursuing MA history only this time. He began an MA in ASEAN Studies years ago and years back, and well, he's no longer in that program. He's only in the MA history program at this point. I think I've answered the other question. What's going to be the mode of delivery? Let's put it hyflex to accommodate those who would like to come face to face, but at the same time, also accommodate those who would only attend virtually.
Next question. Oh yeah, Sir Reese again is raising his hand. Yes, sir.
Additional, I forgot it earlier. Additional question po. With regards to communicating with the FA history programs, what could be the email or contact person or number in case I will really pursue, because I'm from Mindanao kasi, and if I'll be going to Baguio every weekend, it would be very hard. But I wish to go maybe at least once siguro, or once a month, or maybe once in 2 months. So sinong pwedeng contact person, especially sa application process? And yun po. Thank you.
You can direct, or you can contact GPO. I think you can check the website of UP Baguio, and or can somebody flash the GPO. GPO stands for the Graduate Program Office.
We would like
Where applications are centralized, but at the same time, you can also get in touch with Dr. Charita de los Reyes, who is the coordinator of the MA History program. So there's Dr. Charita de los Reyes, and there's our
the graduate program office.
Program office. Okay.
DJ Escobar.
DJ
Hello po.
Good.
Sir, pwede ba akong mag-share screen? May explain lang din ako sa mga gustong mag-apply. Sir Matt?
Yes
Sir?
po.
Pwede ba mag-share screen, sir?
Does he have the power?
Can we...
We will make you propose.
I-explain ko lang po yung ano din, general requirements para po sa pagpasa ng mga gustong mag-apply.
Okay, ready? Okay na.
So you're a co-host now, Sir DJ. You may now share screen.
Sige po. Ay, wait lang, sir. Okay lang pong i-approve dito. Ooh. Is it possible ba, sir, na kasi kailangan ko daw i-quit yung Zoom ko para ma-restart tong slide. Sige, sabihin ko na lang po, sir. So for those of you who would want to apply, there are several general requirements that the committee will be evaluating. First of all is yung application form and yung reference report form. Di ko kasi ma-share yung screen ko ngayon. But you can email us at gpo.upbagyo@up.edu.ph. That's gpo.upbagyo@up.edu.ph, so that we can give you an e-copy of the application form as well as the reference report forms, because these are important for the committee to be able to evaluate your application. Like for example, yung reference report forms, you have to accomplish 3 of those, which will come from 2 of your former professors. Diba? I-evaluate nila yung learning capabilities nyo, kung prepared na ba kayo sa graduate school and sa pag-apply sa graduate programs, and then 1 from your current or former supervisor. So yun yung ibang requirements. And syempre kasama na dun yung copy ng transcript of records nyo, because we need the committee needs to look at your grades din. Yung birth certificate nyo, and importante for married women who would want to apply, kailangan yung marriage certificate for naming purposes, just in case gagamitin nyo yung maiden name nyo but you're already married, para at least may copy yung college secretary's office natin as well as yung registrar's office natin sa married name nyo and sa maiden name nyo. Yun naman po sa akin. And then along sa fees din naman po, sinabi na ni Ma'am Nela kanina, that's 1,000 per unit. So usually yung isang subject ay 3 units, so that amounts to 3,000 pesos per subject. And on top of that, meron tayong 995 pesos na miscellaneous fee that is to be paid every semester din. Ayan. So baka may mga magtanong din sa inyo kung installment po ba ang pagbabayad ng tuition sa UP Baguio. Hindi po. So you need to pay the tuition in full every semester.
Thank you, Sir DJ. So you can actually try to you can rejoin. Wait. Kasi maybe Sir Joven has a question that's related to that. Sir Joven.
Hello, thank you Sir Matthew, Sir Matthew. Tanong ko lang po dito kasi nakita ko dun sa inyong brochure, no. Official transcript of undergraduate records. What if meron na po kasi akong MA? So if possible, bali pangalawang MA ko na to kung mag-apply po ako. So kailangan din po yung ano pong transcript ang kailangan? Yung may MA or yung baccalaureate degree lang na transcript?
It would always be better kung updated, sir. Anyway, pag nag-MA kasi kayo sa school, sir, ang nangyayari, tina-transfer yung credentials nyo to that school. So that means pag ginawa yung transcript nyo, mula yung bachelor's degree nyo hanggang sa master's degree nyo, nandoon na po sa transcript. So okay lang din naman po na yun yung isubmit nyo. Hindi yung yung undergraduate lang. Kasi kapag pumunta kayo sa school kung saan kayo nag-undergrad, sir, kung iba yung school sa kung saan kayo nag-masters, sasabihin lang din nila, sir, na doon yung kunin sa kung saan kayo nag-masters kasi na-transfer na doon yung credentials ni sir. And that will similarly happen once na accept kayo into the program. So the registrar's office, during yung enrollment period natin, i-instruct din po kayo to submit yung transfer of credentials nyo para malipat na yung records nyo dito from your previous school.
Okay, Sir DJ, thank you very much.
Sige po.
Thank you, sir. Joven or Joven, I hope we answered that question. Are there any other concerns? In the meantime, we've chatted some information, the group chat, where you can learn more about our program in our official website, which is the css.upb.edu.ph. And we have also emailed. We will also email to you we will email again the brochure regarding the MA application. So the website is already at your chat box, and the coordinator for the MA history program, Dr. De Los Reyes, has also shared your email so that to which you can forward your questions and other concerns. Are there other concerns that our colleagues would like to raise? Aside from the program, say the content of the lectures a while ago, while Dr. Kamaga is still in the Zoom. There are no concerns naman po. So, how about you, Dr. Are you okay mag-chat? Dr. Nella Florendo?
I just want to say that after submitting your requirements, there will be an initial screening that will be done, after which you will be called in for an interview that's also done virtually. And that's it. Then there's going to be a decision whether or not you get admitted to the program. So that's going to be the process of getting admitted to the NDS. We have yes, Dr. Illustrate, why don't you appear? Oh,
Yes, please, Dr. De Los Reyes.
so here's to you. No, she just reminded me that the deadline has been moved to December 21.
The deadline for applications.
The deadline for filing applications is December 21.
You still have time to decide. And we hope you will join us in our program. Are there any other concerns that our colleagues would like to raise and our participants in the Zoom? I guess Dean Lea perhaps would like to add something. Dean Lea is here in the Zoom right
Okay
now.
na, Matt. Nothing to add. I'm okay.
Okay, thank you, Dean.
Unless may tanong kayo, wala naman so far.
Okay. So I think we can close the program at this point because we've already exceeded the posted time of our program. So we'd like to thank first everyone again for accepting our invitation, particularly Dr. Camagay and Dr. Abrera and Dean Abrera. So thank you, Ma'am Camagay and Dean Abrera, for sharing your expertise. And of course, our colleagues from all over the country. Before we end, could we just ask everyone to please turn on their cameras so that we can have a digital, hyflex rather, a hyflex photo for our documentation. Ma'am Lu, thank you so much po.
You're welcome anytime.
Thank you po. So our
Would you guys like to stand there in front of the TV?
Oh, yeah, yeah. So we will have to transfer in front of you. Okay.
And ano kaya ang you can have this kayo parang ako ganun lagi.
Paano kaya? Here na. Here.
Yeah,
Okay. So just stand here para may kita din tayo sa webcam.
Hindi na kayo. Boys and girls. Ladies and gentlemen. Oh my God.
Oh, here, you can start with time.
What's that? You want to be part of it? No. Kasi ba tayo lahat sa screen?
Kasha?
No, siya. Okay, hindi ka na. Pero siya na lang. Okay. Tabi mo rin.
Thank you very much for everyone for joining us this afternoon. We hope you learned a lot from the speakers and our presenters. So, moving forward, our certificate of we'll just present allow me to just read briefly our certificate of appreciation for given to our speakers in grateful acknowledgement of being a key speaker in the NHC program orientation. So thank you to all our speakers, to Dean Abrera, to Dr. Camagay, to Dr. Florendo, to Prof. Elumbre, and to Sir Reginaldo. Again, thank you very much, everyone, and we hope that you have a good dinner. So good night. Thank you po.
Good night. Thank you.
Hope to see you in our MA program soon.
Thank you, UP Baguio.
Bye.
Thank you po. Oh. Ay, meron kayong tatlo? Mag-apply ko yun. Ay, mag-apply later.
Sir Ado,
Hi, Ado. What's your news? Mayroon ko in Germany.
Hi, sir.
kasi okay lang kayo
Hi,
dyan.
Hi, Ado.
Kamusta?
Ma'am Cha.
Hi, Dean.
Pamayan ka doon. Parang sa'yo.
Talaga,
Nakakapayat naman Germany, sir.
puro patatas ang kinakain.
Kaya, susundan kita dyan. Siya papayat. Magdali lang ka ngayon. Kaya nga, nakaka-inspire naman ang papayaran naman. Bye-bye.
Sir, ingat kayo dyan, sir.
Bye.
Bye, Ma'am
Ingat
Worthy.
po kayo.